A ballerina's perspective, from performing with New York City Ballet and Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater to publishing poetry books and mentoring kids and teens. Join us in a weekly discussion with experts to gain mental health clarity and achieve growth and moral consciousness. Give our show a 5 stars, comment, share, and come along for the ride.
Welcome to the Growth, Grace, and Gratitude podcast. Today, we will discuss the journey of the awakening woman, setting better standards, and embracing the empowered empath within us. With our returning guest, Laura McDermott, an esoteric psychologist who blends Western psychology, human design, Vedic astrology, and the study of masculine and feminine energies to guide women in transforming their lives and relationships. She specializes in helping clients uncover hidden patterns and align with their true potential. What a beautiful bio. And thank you so much for returning because she's been on my podcast prior just with the audio. So now it feels so nice to do, like we talked about, video and that connection. And I feel like even how your bio is so geared towards helping women navigate like relationships, I think it's such an important part of being able to actually see one another and to see parts of your perspective because like we all have such different perspectives of things.
I think that's the whole beauty of these things, isn't it? There is no one kind of permanent truth. There is all those perspectives and all those ideas and experiences, that shared becomes something new. Thank
Yes,
you for having me.
yes. So excited to have you back on. And when we were on the first time, we talked a little bit about also like what to do with birth chart analysis and how to deal with conflict resolution because that's also like a really major theme. And I thought now it would be a great time to talk about like the feminine, the awakening of the feminine, because oftentimes that it's usually through the polarity of the feminine, which births, creates, gives rise to. So, and so many women are actually feeling this and they're inspired to kind of go on this journey of self reflection, self realization, self actualization. What do you think that women are kind of like experiencing now in terms of awakening?
Awakening from the perspective that I work with women is the awakening of the feminine side because we have lived in such a masculinized world where the masculine qualities have been celebrated for a very, very, very long time. And not that there's anything wrong with a healthy masculine qualities, but when we as women embrace that as, our measure of success or our measure of how we need to be, it's more often than not leads to burnout. Without the feminine qualities, the introspect, the creativity, the flow, the rest, the peace, um, and we embody all these masculine qualities to succeed in most women who don't have a relationship or embodiment of this feminine side, they end up in this burnout. They end up in these situations where illness stops them or something else stops them. And I think we are more what I see around is this awareness of that. Maybe although the masculine qualities have been celebrated for so long, we do need to embrace and value the feminine because it's not that outside world doesn't value feminine. We don't value our feminine. We think it's less so. If you and we judge other women for sometimes for this embodiment of the feminine.
If you're ready to shake off that daily stress, come join us for online beginner, adult, ballet, and yoga classes each week to connect with the flow of movement and the art of ballet into perfect synergy. Come as you are and learn to love your body a little bit more and gain strength and flexibility with each class. All are welcome. Sign up at Ballet Arts Movement telovital@gmail.com. First class free. Telovital supports focus, energy, immunity, sleep, recovery, and resilience. Start feeling better today on a cellular level with zeolite, super green juice, micronutrient gut support, and more. Get over 50% off your first order for Telovital. Link in the description of the podcast.
We are so conditioned in this masculine way of thinking that the feminine doesn't always have a place or have a space in our own lives and what we see around us. But I see it's changing, and there are more and more women embracing and actually lifting this collectively up, this value of feminine. So that's my kind of take on it. What do you think, and how it is in your life? How do you see these polarities?
I love how you explain that. I feel like a lot of successful, productive women are also very masculine inspired. That's the energy that they're able to create with. And I think that's where that balance is so difficult because when we do have that masculine ability to rise to the occasion to create a successful business or to work on manifesting great abundant things, I think the feminine struggles with taking a step back sometimes and feeling consciously detached. And I think that also might come from childhood wounds where there's kind of like an anxiety and feeling to overly attach to external things, maybe. So when we're able to kind of see that, to be like, oh, I think I may be too attached. Maybe why I'm attached might be due to like fear of failure or fear of maybe the unknown, like shifting timelines, because so often when feminines are on a journey of self-discovery, they have to change timelines and go a different direction, one where they haven't gone before because nobody led them there. Maybe they're actually supposed to kind of steer away from the crowd and build a new narrative, like a holistic narrative. And I think the overall struggle for many women is to embrace that idea of self-awareness and to shift. And even if it might feel kind of uncomfortable at first, because when we're on a spiritual journey, it's often uncomfortable when we have to make decisions that are aligned with our consciousness, our morality, and our good standards. And that might feel like a betrayal to other people, and they might actually be upset at us because they're expecting us to go this way or follow this belief system. And when we become strong enough and empowered enough in our authenticity and transparency, we'll just be like, I can see where you're coming from, but that does not work for me. And to have that confidence and structure to be empowered about your decision, especially when people might be rejective because either there's jealousy or they just don't understand, giving women the power back to understand their gifts and their allowance to move in that space also will give them more safety, confidence, and hopefully just more success overall.
Yeah, and you mentioned this childhood and how it comes from childhood, and of course because as women we do have primary need for safety. I think I talked about it last time when we met.
Yeah,
And when you mentioned failure or fear of failure or new unknown, all of those are rooted in safety. So fear of failure is safety, because if I fail I'm going to be rejected. Fear of unknown, I might be rejected, or there's going to be community, there's not going to be anyone there that can, be there for me. So all of those are rooted in this safety. And obviously our masculine side is there to also protect us if needed. However, most of us have this masculine side in overdrive. It protects us so much that we don't lean into our feminine side at all, because it's scary, it's unknown. And we, like you said, unknown. What is unknown? Unknown is lack of safety, because we don't know. It's,
yeah,
and we lean back to it. And but I think it's beautiful when we can see that journey from very masculine way of living to slowly understanding what feminine is, and then starting like my own journey was like I was this, very driven, in my masculine. I needed to control, I needed to be in charge. If I was in control, it gave me sense of safety. I achieved, and I achieved some more, and never felt satisfied or never felt content with it. And in relationships, I was the one who made decisions and so on. All from my masculine, everything from my masculine. I didn't actually trust anyone else to be there, so I was there for me. And it's very lonely because actual feminine is all about connection.
Unlock your best life with Soul app. Book a holistic wellness experience with a trained guide and start changing your life today with compassion practices, inner healing, food and diet, and so much more. Tap into a healthier and happier life with the #1 purposeful living app in the US, the Soul app, link in the description of the podcast. Sanger Daniel's online seminar promoting a positive message of self-healing with bioenergy work together with live seminars and remote coaching. Use code BIO20 for a 20% discount for our audience. Link in the description of the podcast.
We want to be vulnerable, we want to let go, but for me that was completely alien concept. So I wasn't emotional, I wasn't showing my emotions. My emotions was probably frustration, annoyance, and anger most of the time, and not, for example, sadness or those kind of emotions that are soft. So I had to learn from coming from this, learning about masculine, feminine, yin yang, Tao, Shiva and Shakti, and all of those kind of things from, what we knew thousands and thousands and thousands of years, to then consciously start changing my behavior. And like everything else, it's quite hard to change your behavior just because you know it. So now I know it. Now I can try to do it. 3 times I do it, fourth time it falls down. And then slowly, slowly now I'm totally embodying it within my body. I'm accepting this as a part of me. And reality shifts because feminine attracts masculine, and anything comes in balance in this world. So more you lean into your feminine, outside world provides you the masculine, instead of internally you providing the masculine and then trying to be, well, I'll be feminine when everything else is fine. More you lean into it, more you allow somebody hold the door for you, more you say, look in their eyes and say thank you for it, more those things start happening. And that's little things. Yes, I don't want to live in the world where men don't open doors and don't carry your shopping. I i don't want to do that. But there are so many men who now I speak, and they're like, well, I'm not sure whether I should be holding the door, because sometimes I just get like an angry look that she can do it herself. And it's not done in purpose, it's conditioned into us that we don't need men or we don't need this. And it's not that we need them and we can't survive without them, but it's nicer with them. Why not? Why not allow to open the doors? Why not allow to, pay for you in a restaurant? Why not allow to be taken care of and being in creative, in the flow, in the state that you can be, that brings so much joy and beauty in this world? And men can't do that. They can't bring that joy and beauty and creativity and flow and connection that women do. So we have to protect that feminine energy within us. So I don't know what's your personal experiences with that specific thing, like the masculine feminine dynamic within you. Would be interesting to hear if you don't mind sharing.
Yes, I absolutely love what you mentioned, and it is so common. It is such a big thing now, and I do feel like during a long period of time, the feminine shifted towards the more masculine role, which is great. It's great to experience this kind of like aggressive, inspired, motivational, action oriented side. It's great. But then there's a point where I feel like many women were fed this notion, this kind of false idea of empowerment and success to leave the masculine behind. And I think once that narrative was out there, that became very toxic. And it gave the women so much kind of, I think it even made them even angry because when we have the balance of masculine and feminine, this is a physical reality, we have like a team, we have a partnership, we have unity. And when people are saying like, you need to be more masculine, you have to just be empowered yourself, and you don't need a masculine. You don't need men, it's fine, like you just have to rise up. That became an unbalanced situation, and that's not fun. If you think about it from the side of like friendship and fun, we have fun when we're balanced, and we have balance within ourselves and within the external world. And I mentioned before about like connection and how women really desire connection. It's interesting because I think today is actual National Hug a Bear Day. So this is like connecting to that feeling of comfort and closeness and practicing compassion. And it also reminds our inner child of that unconditional love and joy. And even hugging heals. It's like it heals our nervous system. It brings us back to center, groundedness, and that's that feminine role in us to embrace love, to embrace being given love. And I think that's a big part of our society. And I actually feel like we're shifting from a more liberal perspective to a more conservative, traditional perspective, because that's what women are craving now. They're craving, like you mentioned, for men to open doors. They're craving to be seen and loved for just who they are. And I think it would be great for women to accept that if they feel comfortable in their space. And once women do feel comfortable and safe, that's when they want to relax and be given love and feel comfortable to accept it. Because we were also sometimes taught as children not to even accept it, or not to accept gifts, or not to accept love in such a beautiful, pure way, because either it doesn't exist or there's usually a trauma wound attached to that. So I usually tell my clients who are like in inner child healing to write affirmations that help them shift their mindset towards being accepting of love, unconditional love, where you don't have to necessarily give and take equally in that moment. Because if you're generally giving a giving person, which many empaths are completely giving, and they're so warm and kind and open, and that they feel like their like destiny is to be giving, then they're not able to receive. So that wound is a really big one. And when women are able to kind of like receive and experience the gratitude and the joy in that, I think that's where really healthy, positive shift happens. And a realignment actually happens with how women are treated and how they allow themselves to be treated. Because like if they don't have boundaries, they'll be okay with everything. They'll be okay with people treating them a certain way, or they'll think that's how it's supposed to be. So going back to like the roots of now, how should a woman be treated? They have to have respect, they have to have kindness, and yeah, there has to be a deep appreciation for who they are.
Yeah, and you mentioned about the giving and receiving, and feminine is receptive. However, many women can't receive, and you can hear that when they complimented. Oh, you've got such a nice jumper or hair or whatever. Oh, it doesn't matter. It's just a fiver from whatever.
Right?
This brushing off and not being able to receive is a clear sign of somebody not being comfortable with the feminine side. Because feminine, first of all, is receptive and it receives and only then gives. If empaths, and obviously, there's so many different dimensions in empaths. There's no empath is not one thing, but there are so many women who identify themselves as being empaths, but all they do is earning love. They give to receive. They think if they give enough, at some point they will receive back, but it never works that way. Because first of all, we learn to receive. We receive from everything. We notice what's around us. The hot shower in the morning, you can be grateful and receiving it from all those people who came together over hundreds of years to make sure that you can have a hot shower. It wasn't possible 200 years ago. But you can. So you can be grateful for so much around in your day-to-day life. So that's the gratitude that we start receiving. And if we don't have the gratitude from those little things, and then we see what happens when somebody tells you something. So that's already verbal expression, something nice. They say you something nice and you brush it off. That's your inability to receive. That's nothing to do with being an empath. So then the next level is I can't take anything. I can't accept somebody paying for my dinner. I can't accept a present because they're gonna want something back. I can't do this. So that's now talking about physical things. You're rejecting, you're rejecting, you're rejecting, and you think it's always have to be this. If I'm giving this, I can take this much. If I'm giving this, an empath, because they're not sure how much they can take, because they can't take, they don't know how to take, don't know how to receive. They keep giving, 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 and hoping that someone's gonna show them how much they deserve to receive.
Podpitch is the first and only software that finds, writes, and sends pitches to podcast hosts from your actual email address. Podpitch will make sure you get podcast bookings, guaranteed. Link in the description of the podcast. ClickFunnels easily build any type of online business and sales funnel in record time, no matter what your product, service, or niche, without any tech design or experience whatsoever. Try the ClickFunnels 14-day free trial. Link in the description of the podcast.
Many empaths do that, and it's their inability, and it's not their fault. Very early, they've been conditioned that they have to look after other people, and only then they get their needs met, even basic needs, even food, shelter, some love, some affection, even the basics that we need as babies, they probably didn't receive in the way they needed to. And what they do now is like they realize they have to take care of everybody else's needs around them just to be taken care of, and they carry that on in their adult lives. And what happens, they can never receive because that part of receptiveness was never developed. No one helped them and said, you are worthy, you can have this, it's for you, you are okay, you are value, you are, and yeah, and that's what many women that I work with have this thing that, they give so much and they just don't know how to receive.
Wow. Yeah, that's such a big point. And I usually I tell my clients when they're going through this kind of cycle, I tell them like, what is your message to your teenage self, your feminine self when you were a teenager? Because so often that's where something is starting to rebirth or come to into play. And usually it's like suppressed or there's some kind of trauma that happened there. Or something that they're really going to receive in terms of like love and acceptance, and they just didn't feel that they received that, even if they did actually receive it, but they weren't integrated into their reality. So, because oftentimes when we're teenagers, we're like rebellious, we don't necessarily see what's in front of us. We're kind of just like this aggression, anger, and we want to be free and we want to experience kind of like the polarity of things. So I think it's an interesting point to connect to the teenage self within us and to kind of see what was missing then and what kind of things were you given at that time that maybe you wanted to respond in a different way, or maybe we wanted to feel in a different way because sometimes we just brush off things. For example, if we had like a really great friend, we were teenagers, and we didn't appreciate, like you mentioned, gratitude, the simplistic, the, the gratitude of a shower, the gratitude of a good friend. Like, some people who had such amazing friendships, but then they weren't grateful for that. They didn't nurture it, and they were just like, it didn't lead anywhere. And then when they became adults, when they went through loneliness and they felt isolation, and for some people, that's also a lesson on like missed opportunity and how to actually be in the present and embrace gratitude, embrace that ability to see the good. So I do think there's also like a perspective shift here when women are tuning into their inner child self, their teenage self, and seeing like what part did you play in this role of rejecting something, not appreciating something, or missing something? Because we all have a blind spot. We all kind of move through life in different timelines, make themselves clear to us later on in hindsight. So it's a big lesson for women to embrace, and I'm also like embracing different lessons where maybe as like an empath identity, I was so giving it to clients without actually receiving it back, and I thought, I have to be kind, but it's like, do you have to be kind? What is that purpose? You're not volunteering. If you want to volunteer to be kind, please do volunteer and do kind things to your neighbors and your friends when, they're helpless or they're going through something. But to be consistently giving to people who are capable of doing things themselves, just kind of take a step back and to take note of, is this energy with the energy exchange, this is fair? And this gives the empaths more the empowered muscle, to kind of tune into not judging, but being like morally aligned.
Yeah, I think it's also you just touched to something that's super important. When you do something for people who can do that thing for themselves, it's actually damaging for those people. You're actually taking the opportunity to grow, learn, and live away from someone else. And that is not just unhelpful, but it can be damaging. Because imagine, let's take a child and a parent. If you constantly keep doing things for them that they are way capable doing themselves, and you constantly overdo it because you think you can do quicker or you can do better, or you feel guilty for something, or you keep doing those things for that child will never learn those things that he needs to learn or she needs to learn. So we actually damaging by doing something for someone that they're capable. When they ask, the difference is when they ask for your help, you can decide, okay, do I have time, energy, and am I willing to help? I'm helping. It's very, very different when it's invited help. It's a very different help. It lands differently to when it's uninvited and we just assume that this person can't or they wouldn't without us or so on. It's a very it's this parent child dynamic, even if it's just a relationship, not your parent and child. But if it's, couple, they do this, people do this in relationships and they keep the other person in this child's position because they can control this better than if there would be two adults waiting for an invitation to help if needed.
That is so true. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like narcissism, and sometimes a lot of narcissists get into kind of dynamics that are parent child, and they feel like either they're being the child, or oftentimes they want control. And it feels very kind of toxic, and it happens when the empaths connect with narcissists because, the givers, the takers. So that's a really great thing about the parent-child dynamic, and to kind of to shift out of it is to become aware first what's happening. Because so often people start controlling empaths in the beginning and in slight things. And the empath has to push back and to question that or make a statement like, why? Or I don't feel comfortable doing this. And I feel like so many empaths don't feel comfortable to like say that and to make a stand. But when they start this journey of setting those boundaries, they're able to see very quickly their own value and the value of the relationship. That if it is unbalanced, if it is like you mentioned, the parent-child dynamic, like you'll see like, oh wait a second, why is this person making me feel like a child, or if they're not giving me the ability to make my own mistakes? And I think that's the fear that all humans have, obviously, right? We have this fear of making mistakes, and we think we have to protect everybody around us. It's like, it's okay, I'll take care of it. It's like that parenting, it's like a parenting role. But it's like when children fall down, that's when they learn, right? Like that's where they actually it happens.
Yeah, and you mentioned this thing. So we do things that's not good for us out of fear of losing, being rejected, being abandoned. Yeah. So fear of rejection, fear of abandonment up to age of 7 is two the traumas that impact the most and happens to many people. So because of those traumas that we experienced in childhood, we think that any rejection or any abandonment or possibility of that is scary, and we're not going to be okay, because we wouldn't be if we were babies. However, we haven't realized that we are adults. And if someone doesn't like me and doesn't love me, I will be okay. And getting to the space that I'm okay if you don't like me is the point that you know that you are adult. You become adult when you truly understand the feeling, how it feels that, Ari, if you don't like me, I will still be okay. If my partner decides that he doesn't love me anymore, I will be okay. And that is the difference between carrying the trauma, even if you think you healed the trauma from childhood, but you still have behaviors that signals that I'm only doing this deep down because I'm scared to be alone, or scared to be ignored, or scared to be rejected, or scared to be pushed away, or scared, whatever it is, as was very valid in childhood. It was not denying it, but as an adult, I'm okay either way. You don't like me, and I'm still okay, and you are okay.
I
You know.
love I love that perspective so much. More people have to embrace that, because then everything will shift in such a great way, because that people pleasing tendency is instilled in a lot of people early on. And then when they become adults and they have that empowerment back, I feel like that's where great things can happen, because we're not afraid of those feelings. And it's normal to be rejected. Like if you apply for a job or you have a relationship and doesn't work out, it's so sad and it hurts. But that's life and that's fine. And I think we have to accept that reality and not make such a huge harsh judgment on us if something doesn't work. Because if we would just see failure as a stepping stone to success, we would be able to just embrace ourselves that much more through those breakups or through people not liking us. It wouldn't be such a soul crushing experience, because we have value in ourselves. We know we're worth greatness. We are worth being aligned to the things that we need, the things that we desire. I think you mentioned about having confidence, having the ability to embrace your feminine self. That's also kind of part of it, is to be aware in the silence, in the stillness of your value. I think that's the most empowered thing that one can do.
I really liked how you said it's normal to be rejected. It's actually very healthy to be rejected, because imagine how exhausting your life would be if nothing and no one would reject you. You wouldn't even have that much energy to interact with all of these things. So it's a healthy way of establishing what's not yours. So rejection, it's actually not. I like how you said it's normal to be rejected, but I actually think it's healthy to be rejected.
That's so true. That is so true. I feel like in school we have to learn these kind of conscious things that, for this week's homework, get rejected. Find somebody to reject you and see how it builds you up. And it's like, oh, okay, how do I feel about this? How do I feel about being rejected in this friend group? It's like, oh, it feels nasty. It feels like I'm not in a group. So, okay, can you go to a different group? Can you make new friends? Can you go towards a different path? Maybe find a new hobby, something fun for you. So it's like this all comes back to growing and evolving and becoming your best self and not being overly dependent on people, because then if we're not able to be rejected, we're going to be so um, overly scared and codependent, I think, because we don't know that freedom where something doesn't work out, we gotta go. And I think that's also like a great message for women to kind of embrace rejection in a way and not feel ashamed, because when people have that idea that failure decides their identity, that's really wrong. I think that's not a good way to look at it at all. It's like failure should not lead to shame. It should show you the opportunities that you have in yourself that you can shift and you can work harder on and you can master yourself in some kind of way. What do you think about the whole idea of like failure and shame? Because so many people do struggle with
It's because the system that we grew up unschooling, like the school system, is basically designed to enforce that, because there is, the tests, then you are called in front of the class to recite the poem, and if you don't do it, you get a bad mark. And marks are then totaled up, and you get something at the end of the year, and and then your parents involved in all of this. So we are conditioned that there is a failure, but there is never actually a failure. Failure does not exist. Everything is a process, and everything is a learning process. So if we had a different schooling system, we wouldn't even have the connection between the failure and shame. We wouldn't, because it wouldn't be possible. The same homeschooled children, most of them, if they had the decent parents, they don't have it. For them, it's just exploration and learning. They don't have that connection. For majority kids who went to a traditional school, if they wasn't those at the top 5% who succeeded, and they just had this perfectionism, and especially those poor kids who was like, A's across the board, they have so much to unpack with psychologists. Yeah.
that.
But let's say if you were somewhere in the middle and the bottom, you would connect that with shame. You would, because the system's designed for it. And so
Wow.
you have to unpack that all it is, it's you conditioned to connect those two things. Something, you're not doing something good enough, it's shameful. It's not you not doing something good enough. You might not be interested in it. It might not be your thing. You might not prepared enough. You might interpreted the same thing very differently, and you gave an answer that you interpreted in a different perspective. Your perspective wasn't by the book, so it could have been that you just thought outside the box. Maybe you couldn't focus, you had ADHD. So there's so many things, but what we do is just two things: your marks in school, and it's connected to shame if it's not good enough. That's
Wow.
it. It's
Yeah.
And that's the fear of failure comes from. That's it. We wouldn't have it if we wouldn't have schooling system. If
Wow.
everything would be seen as exploration and learning, it would be like when you are crawling and then started walking and started running. Nobody said you're failing if you're falling down in the process of going up. School did it.
That is beautiful. I love that. And I love how you mentioned about homeschooling because I was actually homeschooled for a period in my life when I was professional dancing when I was younger and I grew up in that environment. So I love how you mentioned that because it's kind of true. Like I don't have shame like at all about that. And a lot of my friends who were homeschooled also, they have like a different psychology. It's totally true. And when I did have to go back to school in high school, I could kind of see like how kids were reacting with failure and if they didn't get like hungry, obviously they feel like a failure and it sucks. And it's very interesting how you mentioned that the school education system because I went to a performing arts high school, and that's where we had the gift of creativity. We had dance, musical theater, acting, singing, playing instruments. We had that as an option for kids, and those kids were so much happier, and they were able to kind of channel their their energy towards something creative. And I think that's a really big theme that children need that outlet. They need to be given those tools to not only like thrive with A pluses because sometimes yes kids just are not able to and it doesn't mean they're a failure. It means their energy may be channeled in a different way and maybe they're going to be like a star athlete or a star performer and that's their life destiny and that's their purpose. But if we're not giving kids those tools in schools, it's like that's a failure, but a real failure on the school part because we have to give kids that space to start learning about their art. And I think art is such a great gift for kids to help them through not having so much shame as an adult because they don't know how to express themselves. They don't really feel their value. They feel their worthiness.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think the school system has a lot to answer and for, and I think obviously then parents get roped into it and so on, like you said, and those kids in conventional schools, they don't necessarily have the ability to express those talents that they might have, and even if they do, it's also very much depends on the teachers, because the same teacher, one teacher could teach maths and you don't understand anything, and then another teacher comes and you suddenly start understanding it. So there is that connection to that, to someone who teaches as well, because if somebody is super charismatic and really involved in their subject, they will bring a lot of children with them. And then there who are just teachers and they're just teaching, going through the motions, and children when they're little, they also feel that, and they just can't connect with the subject because they can't connect with the teacher. And we also miss some of those kids who would be interested in some of that stuff, but because they don't have the connection, they just not, doing as well as they maybe could do. But the school system's probably going to fall down soon anyway. I think it's
Yeah,
really
there,
struggling.
yeah, there has to be like a future in that, and I think it's totally.
It's such an interesting subject, isn't it? We could just talk forever. But yeah, I really like how you said that it's normal to be rejected. But yeah, it's, I think that's a whole lot in the subject in itself, that could be talked and talked. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
great to
yeah.
see you. And
It's so good
yeah,
to have you back on. I love the conversation. I feel like our listeners are gonna just have such a great learning experience to learn about the art of, value and how to be an empowered woman or man going through life, going through ascension, trying to be like your best self. And where can people connect with you and see your
majority of my things are in Instagram, esoteric psychology. I talk about all things masculine, feminine dynamics, human design.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming on, Laura. I had a wonderful conversation.
Me too. Thank you. And see you